Good evening, everyone. I'm Preeti, product expert from Zoho Books. Today, we'll be covering upon the topic e-invoicing. Before we start the webinar, I would like to inform that today's webinar is conducted in our in-house application Trainer Central. So let's just quickly start the webinar. So I'm pleased to welcome you all to another webinar on the topic of electronic invoicing. So in today's digital era, we understand how e-invoicing has become a vital element of business. So e-invoicing is focused on modernizing the traditional methods. This can transform the way your business handles the financial transactions. So I am thrilled to introduce the remarkable benefits of e-invoicing and its capabilities in Zoho Books. This can streamline your financial processes efficiently. So by the conclusion of this presentation, you will have a comprehensive understanding of what is e-invoicing, how it operates in Zoho Books, and how these features can help you save time and enhance your business. Let's just quickly jump into the agenda of today's webinar. In today's webinar, we'd be covering on what is an e-invoice, why do we need an e-invoice, and what are all the businesses which are applicable for e-invoicing, what is the entire flow of this IRP portal, and how do we generate e-invoices from Zoho Books. This will be followed up by the common errors. We'll discuss on the common errors which customers face when generating e-invoices, followed by a question answer session. Let us just quickly jump into the webinar. Before we begin with the topic of e-invoicing, let me just give you a brief on what Zoho Books is. So Zoho Books is a cloud-based accounting software that adheres to the GST regulations. It enables business owners, including those with no accounting experience, to manage crucial accounting tasks effectively. So users can easily generate invoices, estimates, and that will meet the GST standards. They can also track expenses, bills, record project timesheets, and also manage inventory and much more. Now let us understand on what is an e-invoice. The e-invoice is a push to transform the Indian economy into a digital one. An e-invoice is nothing but a digital document that is exchanged between a supplier and a buyer, and this document will be validated by the government tax portal. Now, you might get a question that I generate invoices already. Why do I need an e-invoice? So, this invoice system ensures that a common format is followed by all businesses before that is reported to the GST portal. This common format will ensure that there is no manual errors involved in your invoices, and it also ensures that a common format is followed before it is reported to the GST portal. Now, this brings us a question of whether this e-invoicing is essential for your business. So when did this e-invoice come into picture? E-invoice has been mandated from 1st of October 2020 for businesses with more than 500 crores turnover. Now this has been brought up to business with more than 5 crore turnover, which is effective from 1st of August 2023. Let me just give you an example on this applicability. Consider that your turnover has crossed 5 crores in the year 2019 to 2020. So in this case, the next year the turnover might have been lesser than the 5 crores. So now, are you applicable for e-invoicing? Yes, because from 1st of October 2020, right from when e-invoice was mandated, within this time frame, if your business has ever crossed this 5 crore turnover, your business has to enable e-invoices and generate e-invoicing for all the transactions. Now we have understood what is an e-invoice, whether e-invoice is mandatory for your businesses, and this brings us to the next question on what type of transactions you should be pushing it to the e-invoicing portal. So there is not a necessity that you will have to push all the transactions that you create to the portal. You will have to push only invoices, credit notes, and debit notes that are created for B2B customers, exports, supplied by SEZ customers, the deemed export, and supply to the government. The transactions that are exempted are the B2C supplies, the delivery challan, and the job work. B2C supplies are nothing but the invoices or credit notes raised for your customers or unregistered business. The sectors which are exempted from e-invoicing would include insurance, financial institutions, banking. So now let me give you an overview on what are the details are mandatory which should be present in your transaction and what are the details that will be validated by the government. So as far as the organization details are concerned, let's say you are running an organization in Zoho Books. So your legal name, GST number and the address of the organization is mandatory. As far as your customer details are concerned, the same legal name, GST treatment, GSTN and the billing addresses are mandatory. As far as the transaction details are concerned, the number, that is the invoice number or the credit note number or the debit note number is mandatory. And the date of the transaction and the total of the transaction is mandatory to push it to the IRP. In the item details, you will have to ensure that the HSN code, the selling price and the GST rates are mentioned in the item details. As mentioned by us, the addresses for both the organization and the customer are mandatory, and your address should include not just the city name or just the street address. It should have the complete address right from the street, city, zip code and the state. Now the next question that comes to our mind is that is there any time limit to push it to IRP and generate the IRN? There has been no time limit fixed by the government so far, but from 1st of May 2023 onwards, the businesses which has crossed the 100 crore turnovers must generate their e-invoices within 7 days of their invoice date. Let's say you have raised an invoice on 1st of August and you will have a time till 7th of August to push your invoices if your business has crossed the 100 crore turnover. If it is 8th of August, if you have missed the 7 days time frame, you will not be allowed to raise the invoices on the 8th day. This is the time limit mentioned only for businesses that has crossed 100 crore turnover so far. We have discussed on what is an e-invoice, who all are applicable, what are the transactions you should push and what are the mandated details it should be present in the transaction, etc. Now let us understand on what is this flow, like what is the actual flow of this e-invoice, how it is raised, how does the IRN details are generated. So as far as e-invoicing is concerned, there are two parts. The part A will have the communication between the business and the registration portal, that is you and the IRP portal. So the part B will include the IRP portal, the GST portal or the e-waybill portal if you are generating e-waybills. So through e-invoicing, fields will be automatically filled when you are filing the returns. So this will reduce the errors during data entry and reconciliation. So this flowchart will help you understand what is the flow of creating an e-invoices. Basically, the first step you will be starting up is you will be entering your transaction details, that is the invoice details, or let us consider that you are raising an invoice. So we will be preparing the invoice. After we prepare the invoice, we will push this to the IRP portal. IRP is invoice registration portal. In invoice registration portal, they will validate the details that are provided by you. They will check if there are any duplicates for these invoices. And then after validating all these details, they will provide a digital signature to your invoice, which will also have the QR code to it. So once this IRP validates your document, an acknowledgement number will be provided and unique e-invoice number will be provided to the invoices. So once the IRP portal completes its process, you can view this IRP details in your GST portal directly. That is because the IRP portal will send the invoice details to the GST portal automatically. You can view the details in your GSTR 1, and on the other part, that is your buyer, they can also view these invoice details automatically, as the GST system will automatically update the GSTR 1 for seller, that is for you, and GSTR 2A for the buyer, that is for your customers. So the IRP will be generating a unique number, right? The unique number will be based on the details that are submitted by you, which will include the GST number, document type, document number, etc. Now that we have seen what is an e-invoice, what is the flow of e-invoice, let us just quickly see on how this new e-invoicing system helps businesses do their process efficiently and how far it is better from the old invoicing system. So we'll just have a quick run through on what are the differences in the old invoice generation system and the new invoicing system. As far as reporting is concerned, the flow remains the same. but the invoice has to be modified as per the e-invoice format with mandatory parameters which we have discussed in the previous slides, where you will be filling up your GST number, your address details. Generally, you will identify the invoice with the invoice number that you are providing. But in the e-invoicing system, a 64-digit IRN number, which is invoice registration number, is automatically generated when you push it to the IRP portal. And this IRN number, the 64-digit, will be unique for each invoices that are pushed to the IRP portal. This will help in identifying the duplicates and reducing the manual errors. So once you push the invoice to the portal, the IRP portal will validate the genuineness of the details provided and will digitally sign the invoice, which I have mentioned in the previous slide. So this is now after the IRN details are added and the digital signature is provided, this is considered as a authenticated document now, which will be shared with the seller, and the same details will be updated in the GST and e-way bill system. In the old invoice reporting system, there are more people involved, like the person who is creating the invoice and the person who is filing it in the GST portal. So the more people involved, there is a more probability of having errors in filing your returns. In the current e-invoicing system, however, these errors can be avoided. So the IRP portal itself validates the details that you're pushing into the IRP portal, and this will automatically update the GSTR 1 and 2 for the sellers and buyers. So far we have understood on what is an e-invoice, what is the flow of an e-invoice, what are the benefits of this new e-invoicing system. Now let us understand on what are the features of e-invoicing that are provided in Zoho Books. So since Zoho is a GSP provider, you can easily set up this e-invoicing integration. Zoho Books will help you generate error-free invoices, because before you even push it to the portal, we will show up messages where you will be able to correct your errors, which we will be seeing it in the upcoming slides. Next, you can send the invoices with a single click of a button. After generating the invoices, you can even see the status of what is your e-invoice. And let's say you have made some mistakes in your invoices, obviously you have the option of cancelling the invoices. And for recurring invoices also, you can automatically set preferences to push automatically to the portal. So e-invoicing in Zoho Books is a straightforward and convenient process. Zoho Books can be easily connected with the IRP portal. There are 3 steps involved in generating e-invoices directly from Zoho Books. The first step would be registering yourself in the IRP portal. So first you will have to log into this URL which is mentioned in the screen, that is https einvoice1.gst.gov.in. Once you log into this URL, you will be able to see a registration option in the right corner, and you will have to select portal login from the drop down. Once you select portal login, you will be asked to enter your GST number. You will have to enter the GST number, enter the CAPTCHA and click go. So based on your GST number, your trade name, address details will be populated automatically. All you have to do is verify if the details are correct and click send OTP. An OTP will be sent to your GST registered number. You can validate the OTP and confirm it. With this, the first registration process is completed. Now, this step is enough to raise invoices directly from the e-invoicing portal. But to generate e-invoices directly from Zoho Books, we will have to enable a API access between Zoho Books and the IRP portal. There are 2 ways to enable this API access. The first way would be if you are generating e-way bills also directly from Zoho Books. You might have already completed the API registration, so you can use the same username and password for e-invoice registration as well. You don't have to create a new API username again in the portal. So on the second scenario, where you have not generating e-way bills directly from Zoho Books, you will be asked to make a new API registration. For the same, you will have to log into the e-invoicing portal. Once you log into the e-invoicing portal, this is the dashboard you will be seeing up. You can click the API registration option in the left navigation pane, and you will be seeing an option as user credentials, under which you will see multiple options like create API user, freeze user, change password, or list of API users which has been registered so far. So once you click create API user, this is the screen you will be seeing up. You will be asked a question on whether you want to register your GSTN for API interface. In that, you will have to select the option as through GSP, and in select your GSP, you will have to select Zoho Corporation as your GSP provider. Once you enter your GSP, you will be asked to enter a username and password. After you successfully enter a API username and password, you can click save. This API username and password is very important because this is the credentials you will be using up in Zoho Books to connect it with the IRP portal. The next step would be, how do we create the invoices from Zoho Books and push it to the portal now? Now that we have registered in the IRP portal, enabled the API access, now we are going to connect it in the Zoho Books and we are going to raise invoices for the customer. So to connect it in Zoho Books, you will have to log into Zoho Books, click settings in the right corner, click taxes and compliance. Under taxes and compliance, click e-invoicing, click enable e-invoicing. You can select the preferred turnover based on your company's turnover for the particular year, and you can select the start date. So this start date is very important because based on the start date that we have provided here, the push to IRP button will be available for you to generate e-invoices. You can select a date and we can click enable e-invoicing. Now only the enabling of e-invoicing part is completed. We have not yet connected the Zoho Books and the e-invoicing portal yet. So after you enable it, you will see a list of GST numbers. Let's say you have multiple branches in your organization. And if you wish to enable e-invoices for each GST number separately, you can choose to do so. If you want to enable e-invoicing for a GST number, you can click the connect now button. You can enter the username. So as mentioned already, this username is the API username which you use to register Zoho as your GSP. So under the username, you can enter your username. And before entering the username, make sure you provide API underscore, because this is the right format to enter the username. In case if you have missed it to enter API underscore is also no problem, because Zoho Books has provided notification tab where you will be asked to enter the API underscore in your username. So once you enter the API underscore, the username that you have provided, and if you have entered the password, you can save and validate it. Once it is successfully validated, the e-invoicing status will be connected for the respective GST number. Now the API connection is completed, the registration part is completely over. We'll just quickly look into how do we generate invoices and push it to the IRP portal. You will have to go to the sales module, click invoices. To raise a new invoice, you can click plus new in the right corner. You can choose your customer name. You can select the branch for which the e-invoice is enabled. So as far as we have seen, the invoice number is a mandatory field. So if you have enabled the auto generate option, the invoice numbers will be automatically generated, which will be in series. Later you can select the item details. Make sure that you have entered the rate, quantity, the tax details correctly. And we can save the invoice. Once the invoice is successfully saved, you will find a push to IRP button. So we'll have to click push to IRP. As we have already mentioned, if you are generating e-way bills also from Zoho Books, you can click push both invoice and e-way bill details. Or if you are generating only invoices from Zoho Books to IRP, then you can click push only invoice details. If there are no errors in the details that you have provided, the transaction will be successfully pushed to the IRP portal and the IRN number will be generated for your invoices. So here you can see that an IRN and a QR code has been generated. So where do you see this IRN details? So you will have to scroll down in the invoice section and you will see the unique QR code that is generated and also the IRN details which is unique for this particular invoice. In case if you don't see these IRN details, you will have to enable these options in the template section. For that you can click customize, edit template. You can click the other detail section and you will find the e-invoicing details which has to be enabled. It is mandatory that you show all these details in your invoices. Once you enable these check boxes, you can click save. So now the invoicing details will be reflecting in the template. Now that we have seen how to raise an invoice, how to connect with the IRP portal and how to convert this as a e-invoice, let us consider a scenario that you have generated the invoice and you have pushed it to the portal also. Now the IRN is generated and it is valid in the GST portal. In this situation, you identify later that certain details of the customer that you have provided is incorrect. So what do we do? So as per the e-invoicing mandate, the important details like your customer's address or the GST number, those details which you have mentioned earlier that will be validated by the government, those details you will not be able to edit them in once the IRN is generated. So we will have to cancel the e-invoice only and create a new invoice with the correct details. Let's say the invoice was created today and it is less than 24 hours and you identify that the detail of the customer's address is incorrect. So what do? We cancel it directly in Zoho Books. So since it is less than 24 hours, once you cancel it in Zoho Books, the IRN will also be cancelled in the portal automatically and the IRN will no longer be valid. You cannot use the same invoice number or the IRN details again for any future invoices. So you can go to the sales invoices section, select the invoice that has been created which is incorrect, and you will find the cancel e-invoice button. Since it is less than 24 hours, it will be automatically deleted in the cancelled in the portal also. You can mention the reason and you can cancel the e-invoice. So once the e-invoice has been cancelled, you can see that the IRN generated is no longer valid and the IRN details will be removed from the footer section of your template. This is one case where it is less than 24 hours of time frame till the since the IRN was generated. Let us consider a scenario where it is more than 24 hours since the e-invoice has been generated. How do we cancel such invoices? So since it is more than 24 hours, the e-invoice details are already pushed to your GST portal. So how do we cancel it? The option that is available is you will have to go to sales invoices, select the invoices. Let's say this invoice was created a long back. We can see the IRN time here. It is created on 5th of June. So now I will not be able to cancel e-invoice directly from Zoho Books since it is more than 24 hours. So I will have a mark as cancel button. So you can click the mark as cancel button. Ensure that you mention the reasons. And you can click mark as cancelled. Now on Zoho Books part, you have cancelled the e-invoice and the IRN is not valid here in Zoho Books. But say in the GST portal, the e-invoice will still be available with the IRN details. You will have to manually amend the details in your GST portal section after you mark it as cancelled in Zoho Books. Now that we have seen how to cancel an e-invoice within the 24 hours time frame and if it crosses the 24 hours time frame, what is the process? Let us take one more scenario where you have generated the e-invoice, you have pushed it to the portal and generated it, and later you feel that certain details of the invoice is incorrect and you also marked it as cancelled in Zoho Books. That is after the 24 hours of time frame of your IRN, you identify that this detail is wrong. you have marked it as cancelled in Zoho Books. So now the IRN is not valid. In the portal, the e-invoice is still available, the IRN is still valid. Later you come to understand that no, the details whatever you have provided are right, but you have marked it as cancelled by mistake. So in Zoho Books, the e-invoice is marked as cancelled, the e-invoice has been converted to void status, but whereas in the portal end, the IRN is still valid and the e-invoice is still a valid one, which is available in the GST portal. So now in this case, what do? So we have the option to recall the marked as cancelled invoices in Zoho Books. So you can click the recall option. Now the IRN details whatever has been cancelled has been recalled, and the same will be reflecting in the template footer section. So this will ensure that both your GST portal details and your Zoho Books e-invoice details are in reconciliation. Let us consider one more scenario. There is customer A who has generated e-invoices till last month in a different accounting software or directly in the e-invoicing portal. Now once he migrates into Zoho Books, the IRN details will not be automatically updated, right? So what do? Either we will have to push it again, which is not possible because the details are already populated in the portal end. So in Zoho Books, for that you have an additional option where you can go to the particular invoice. So you can click the three dots next to record payment and you can manually associate those IRN details. You can enter the IRN number, acknowledgement date. These details you can get it from the previous invoices you have raised or in the invoicing portal directly. You can add those details and you can save it. Once those details are added, those IRN details will also reflect in your template. For individual invoices, you can manually click up the three dots and add the details. For bulk invoices, while importing your invoices, you can add those acknowledgement number and e-invoice details in the file and you can import them. Now we have seen how to generate an invoice, how to push it to the IRP portal, how do we cancel an e-invoice. If it is cancelled by mistake, how do we recall them? There is one more additional feature which we can discuss here is not every details are mandated or verified by the e-invoicing portal. There are certain details like your customer notes which are not mandated which are not validated by the portal, but once you push it to the IRP, the system does not allow you to change or make any editing in your invoices. So for these optional fields like your customer notes, Zoho Books has provided an option to edit those details alone even when it is pushed to the IRP portal. So to enable this option, you can go to settings, e-invoicing. So here you have the option of editing to push the transaction that have been already pushed to the portal. So there are certain fields as discussed which can be edited even after pushing it to the portal. So you can enable this option by clicking the enable button under e-invoicing section. So these are the fields which can be edited even after pushing it to the e-invoicing portal. If required, you can enable them. So now even if the e-invoice is generated, you can edit those fields which were listed in the screen. So we have covered various features of Zoho Books related to e-invoicing. Now let us see what are the various statuses you can see in Zoho Books related to e-invoicing. The first one would be yet to be pushed status. So the transactions which are yet to be pushed to the portal will have a yet to be pushed status. You can go to sales invoices. So here you see various symbols which is present next to your invoice number. Let's say the invoice is successfully generated, that is e-invoice is successfully generated, the IRN numbers will also be generated. So those transactions will have a green e-invoice symbol which will notify that these transactions are pushed to the portal. And the transactions which are yet to be pushed, they'll have a yellow symbol with which you can identify the yet to be pushed transactions, and those with the red marks, those are the invoices which has been cancelled in Zoho Books. So if you want to list it out separately also, we have discussed earlier on clicking this custom view. We'll have the different criteria, the pushed invoices alone, or the yet to be pushed invoices we can see, or the failed on e-invoicing, we can see the list here. So next we'll be covering upon the e-invoicing sandbox system. There are few customers who will feel like before trying out directly with the government portal, let me have a testing ecosystem where I can check on how this e-invoicing works. So that is why there is a e-invoicing sandbox that has been provided. So e-invoicing sandbox is a API testing portal that lets you get familiar with this flow that we have discussed. You can raise invoices, you can push it to the portal, you can see how the IRN are generated. So this is just a testing phase where you can get familiar with the process. How do we have this e-invoicing sandbox enable? You will have to create a new test account in Zoho Books, and once that is done, you can contact Zoho Books by dropping us a mail to enable the sandbox. Once we enable the sandbox from our end, you can log into the e-invoice sandbox system. You can fill in the registration form and you can verify it once by providing up the OTP. Once the account is created, obviously you will be setting up a username, password and client ID. With these details, that is the username and password, we will connect it in Zoho Books also. So the e-invoicing sandbox environment is created now. So you can try creating the invoices, you can push it to the portal, you can cancel the invoices and get familiar with the process. So we have discussed so far on the features of e-invoicing, the basics of e-invoicing. Now let us see what are the common errors which users face when they are raising e-invoices from Zoho Books. The first common error would be error when entering your IRP credentials in Zoho Books. You might get an error that the credentials that you are entering is wrong. So as we have discussed earlier, the credentials that you will be entering up in Zoho Books when you are enabling e-invoicing is not your login credentials of the IRP portal. So when we registered Zoho as your GSP provider, we will be entering up a API username and password, and those are the credentials we should use it in Zoho Books also while connecting it. And the other mandate is there should be a API underscore in front of your username. Make sure that you have selected the right GST number. So once these details are verified, you will be able to connect the IRP portal successfully. So the next error would be the push or cancel option is not available. So in these cases, this is a very common error. Let us say you are raising an invoice, but the push option or the cancel option is not available. What do we do? So when does this push option will not be shown when you are raising an invoice? If the push to IRP option is not available, we'll have to verify certain details like what is the customer's GST treatment. For that, you can click the edit option of that invoice. You can verify what is the GST treatment that is mentioned. So only for B2B, overseas and SEZ customers, export invoices, we will be raising up a e-invoice. But here the GST treatment is unregistered business. Let's say the GST treatment is unregistered business or consumers. For those cases, the e-invoicing is not mandatory. Hence, you will not see the push to IRP button. This is case 1. And the case 2 is, let's say for one particular user alone, the push to IRP options are not available. Then we will have to verify if we have provided those access to that particular user. You can verify it under settings. Under users and roles, you can click roles. You can edit the role that has been assigned, or you can create a new role for the user, and you will have to go to the e-invoicing section. So under this e-invoicing section, you will have to enable the checkboxes for the user to have the push or cancel access for any e-invoice transactions. Now the next error, the common error would be error related to phone field in the bill from address. So bill from will denote the organization address. Let's say you have entered the phone number, you have entered all the details correctly, but still you are facing this bill from address error. So what do we do? How do we verify it? You will have to go to settings under organization. If there are multiple branches created, you will have to go to the branches section and make the changes. If there is only one branch, you can click profile and the details of your organization will be listed, which you can edit and change it. For multiple branches cases, you can click branches. Under this respective branch for which e-invoice is enabled, you can click the edit option and you can verify if the phone number is entered correctly here. And the phone number should not have any special characters like the plus symbol before the number, or there should not be extra spaces between or before the number. And the phone number should be only between 6 to 12 characters. So once you verify all these details, you can click proceed. If you want to update the details in all the transactions, you can click update all transaction and you can click save preferences and you can click save. The next error we'll be discussing is error related to phone field in billing address and shipping address. So you can see that the error is the phone field in this transaction billing address should be between 6 and 12 characters in length and also should consist only of numbers. Now that the difference between the previous error message and this error message lies in this billing address name. So in the previous error, we saw it as bill from address, which is your organization address. And for this error, it is mentioned as billing address. So this billing, if it's mentioned simply as billing address and shipping address, it denotes your customer's details. Similarly, you will have to verify if you have entered all the customer details correctly. To verify it, you can go to the particular invoices section. You can select the respective invoice. You can edit the invoice. If it is a billing address error, you can click the billing address edit option. You can click edit. Ensure that there is no spaces in between or before the phone number or any special characters in the phone number. You can verify it and you can save it. The next error would be unit quantity code is not passed. What is this unit quantity code? So unit quantity code is nothing but the term on how we measure a good, that is kilograms, liters. These are the unit quantity code that we provide for each item that we deal with. So when you get an error that the unit quantity code is not passed, you will have to verify if the unit quantity code is selected for your items. First, how do you verify the unit quantity code and where do we mention this unit quantity code? So you can log into Zoho Books, you can go to the item section. You can edit one item. So here next to the unit field, you will have a drop down which you will have an option is configure units. And this is the unit quantity code which has to be filled against the unit that you are using. After you enter the unit quantity code, you can save it and you can reselect the item in your invoice to resolve this unit quantity code error. So the next error would be the errors related to character limits. You will get errors related to that the sales order number should be within 16 characters length. The customer name should be within 3 to 100 characters. So these errors are quite common and you can resolve them by making changes in those fields. For example, if the sales order number error is there, you can log into your Zoho Books. You can go to sales invoices, and for that particular invoices, you might have been provided a sales order number in the order number field. You can edit it. So here you see the order number field. So you can make sure that this order number is only within 16 characters of length. And the next error is customer or vendor legal name should be between 3 and 100 characters. Where do we fill this customer legal name? You will have to log into Zoho Books, go to sales, customers. You can select a particular customer, edit it, and here you will see the business legal name. So make sure that this field is filled with the customer's legal name correctly to resolve this error. So next error would be mark as cancelled option not shown, or only cancel e-invoice option is visible. First, the difference between mark as cancelled and cancel e-invoice, the understanding of this difference is very important. So let's say we have discussed earlier, right? When the invoice is created today and it is less than 24 hours. So what option I will see? I will see only the cancel e-invoice option. Let's say if it's more than 24 hours, I will not see cancel e-invoice option, but the mark is cancelled button. Consider that you have raised this e-invoice. You have not cancelled it. The invoice is successfully created. But after a few hours, you feel that the invoice details are wrong. So you will be obviously cancelling the e-invoice. So this cancel e-invoice option will be available only within 24 hours. And the mark as cancel button will also be available only after 24 hours. That is 24 hours after the IRN generation time. You will find the mark as cancel button against the each invoice that has been created. So the next error would be negative adjustment value error. What is this error? So the e-invoicing portal does not allow any negative values. So let's say you have created an invoice, but when you are generating it, you are facing this negative value error. So how do we resolve it? Let's say when you are generating an invoice, you have provided a shipping charges and adjustment to it. Now your shipping charges you have provided it as 10 rupees, and the adjustment field you have provided again minus value. The total of this shipping charge and adjustment should not be negative. You can provide this as 50 rupees and this is minus 60 rupees, then obviously the difference is minus 10. So the total of the shipping charge and adjustment should not be negative. You will have to ensure that those are the total of these fields are in positive. So the next error would be the field unit price must match with the regular expression. What is this field unit price? So the field unit price error is nothing but the quantity that you select for items in your invoice creation section. The quantity that you select, it should be less than 3 decimal places. That is, when you are raising this invoice, there is a quantity that you give up, right? So in the quantity field, let's say I'm giving the quantity is mentioned as 567. Let's say the quantity is mentioned as such where there are more than 3 decimal places. So the e-invoicing portal does not allow 3 decimal places. So to resolve this error, we can remove 1 decimal place and we can save it, and we can push this invoice to the portal. So this will resolve the field unit price must match with the regular expression error. So now once e-invoice is cancelled for invoice, credit note or debit note, will you be able to change it from void to open or draft status? So as we have seen already, once we cancel an e-invoice, the e-invoice is automatically changed to void status. Why is it changed to void status? As mentioned, the e-invoicing portal does not allow editing of any mandatory fields which we have discussed earlier. So once it is voided, you cannot use the same invoice number or IRN details for the future transactions. To ensure that this process is followed, we are converting this e-invoice into a void status. You cannot use the same number, right? So you can what you can do, you can clone the invoice that will have a new invoice number. You can fill in the correct details and you can push it to the IRP portal again. So the next error would be, let's say the customers will face a scenario where e-invoicing is not enabled for your customer's GST number. What should you do? So when you are raising an e-invoices, right, you might get an error that the GST number is not enabled for e-invoicing. So in those cases, you can verify the status of the GST number in the invoice registration portal. In the invoice registration portal, you can search for the GST number of your customer and you will be able to see the status of e-invoicing for that particular GST number. So if the e-invoicing is not enabled, you can contact the GST self-service portal and you can get help in enabling the e-invoicing for your customer's GST number. So with this, we have come to an end of the webinar. I'll just summarize on what we have seen so far. We have seen what is an e-invoice, what is the flow of an e-invoicing, how do we register ourselves in the invoicing portal, how do we enable this API access, if e-way bill is generated, should we do the API access again? No. Then we have seen how to enable e-invoicing in Zoho Books, how to connect the IRP portal, how to generate e-invoices, push to the portal, cancelling of e-invoices. If it is cancelled by mistake, how do we recall it? And what will be the status of your invoice after you cancel it? What are some of the common statuses for related to e-invoices in Zoho Books? And how to associate IRN details manually for an invoices, and what are some of the common errors which has been incurred when you are generating e-invoices. So with this, we have come to an end of this webinar. Feel free to post your questions. We'll be answering your questions shortly. So I believe this question is related to the quantity field of your item. So as per the e-invoicing mandate, you should be having only less than 3 decimals in the quantity field for any items that you add in a transaction, so that you will be able to successfully push it to the IRP portal. So the next question is whether QR codes will be available in an e-way bill. So yes, e-way bill will also have the QR code mentioned in the transaction. The next question is whether is it possible to edit the date or description of an e-invoice. So the date and descriptions, the description in an item table comes under the mandatory fields which will be validated by the IRP portal. So it's not possible to edit either the date or the description that you provide in an invoice. So the next question is how to cancel an e-invoice after 24 hours of generating the IRN. So as mentioned, if the time frame has crossed the 24 hours limit, you will have to manually amend the invoice in your GST portal. And once you amend it in the GST portal, you can log into Zoho Books, select the respective invoice, and you will find a mark as cancel button. So you can use that button to remove the IRN details, and this invoice will be converted to the void status. So after you generate an e-invoice, changing of any mandatory fields that we discussed, like the GST number of the customer or the billing and shipping address of your customers, or even your organization's billing address, these details you will not be able to make any changes in the e-invoice. So as far as B2B and overseas invoices are concerned, the dynamic code will be generated based on the details you push it to the portal, and with the IRN that is generated, the dynamic code and the QR code is displayed in your B2B and overseas transactions. For B2C invoices, you have the option of creating a QR code in Zoho Books. Let me show you how to enable the QR code for invoices. You will have to go to settings in the top right corner. Under sales, you can click invoices, and if you scroll down, you have the option to enable invoice QR code. So once you enable this, the dynamic codes will be generated for your normal invoices, that is the B2C invoices. So this question is about how to roll back the pushed IRP invoices. So rolling back the invoices once it is pushed to the portal is not possible. So as an alternative, you will have to cancel the e-invoices, or you can raise a credit note and push the credit note to the IRP portal. So this question is regarding whether there is a particular order in which the e-invoice has to be pushed. So there is no mandate or any rule that the invoices has to be pushed in an order. You can generate the invoices, and the invoice number will be in series as per your preferences that you have set up, and you can push those invoices regardless of the order to the IRP portal. The details will be validated by the portal, and the IRN details will be added in your template, that is your invoice or the credit note or debit note transaction templates. Next question is on generating e-invoice for a bill of supply invoice. So as mentioned, there are certain transactions which are not mandatory to generate an IRN. So the bill of supply is also exempted from e-invoicing, since we don't provide any taxes to such transactions. So e-invoice is not mandatory for the bill of supply transactions. So the next question is about bulk generating the IRN, that is how to push invoices in bulk to the IRP portal. So I'll tell you the steps on how to bulk push the invoices. You can go to the sales module, invoices section. You can filter out the view to view those transactions that are yet to be pushed for e-invoicing. So you can select the check boxes prior to the date section, and you will have the three dots here with which you can find the push to IRP button in bulk. So if there are no errors in the data that you have filled up, the IRN will be generated for all those transactions in bulk. And you will also be notified once the IRN is successfully generated. Since the number of transactions you push it is in bulk, this might take some time, but once it is generated, you will be notified in the notification section. So the next question is about whether e-invoicing is applicable for SEZ unit. So the answer is yes. For SEZ unit customers also, you can generate an e-invoice by pushing it to the IRP portal. Next question is about whether editing of e-invoice is possible within the 24 hours time frame. So the answer is no. Once the invoice has been pushed to the IRP portal and e-invoice is successfully generated, editing of any mandatory fields that we discussed is not possible. Certain non-mandatory fields like the order number or the customer notes, that can be edited by enabling the option in the settings. Currently, the turnover for e-invoicing is that your business, if the business has crossed the 5 crore turnover from 1st of August 2023, the e-invoicing is mandatory for those businesses which has crossed the turnover of 5 crores in any financial years in the past. So the next question is whether you can raise a credit note for an invoice in which the IRN is generated directly in the portal. So the answer is yes. Zoho Books has an option where you will be able to associate the IRN numbers manually even if you generate the details in portal. After generating it, you can come to Zoho Books and associate the IRN details manually, which we have covered in the webinar. If the invoice is present in Zoho Books, you can raise a credit note for such invoices and push the credit note also to the IRP portal. So the next question is related to whether e-invoicing should be generated as soon as the turnover has crossed 5 crore or should we wait till the end of that financial year. So the answer is you can generate e-invoices as per your requirement. It can be done on the next day of once your business has crossed the 5 crore turnover, or you can wait till the financial year's end. It is a decision that can be taken from your end on generating the IRN details. I hope we have answered most of your questions. If any questions were left unanswered, we'll be answering it via mail. And thank you for joining this session today. I hope this session was informative and helpful. I hope you have understood on the e-invoicing part how to generate it and how do we generate it from Zoho Books, etc. If you have any further questions on the e-invoicing or on Zoho Books, you can reach out to our support team on support.india@zohobooks.com, or you can also call us on our toll-free number where we'll be providing support in English, Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, Kannada and Malayalam. Thank you for joining us today. Have a nice day.